It's Nana Lucile, and I'm back today with another Bible lesson. We had a lesson last week about David, and he was the one that fought against Goliath and actually killed Goliath. And today we're going to have another story about David. Today's story is called David and Jonathan. You can get a look at the picture. And the story today is from 1 Samuel, chapters 18 through 20. So you see, if you looked at the picture, you could see that there were two guys in the story. One is David and one is Jonathan. And that is the title of our story today, David and Jonathan. Jonathan was King Saul's son, the king that David went to and said, "I'll fight Goliath." So Jonathan became totally committed to David. He was his number one friend. Jonathan, out of his deep love for David, made a covenant with him. He celebrated it with important gifts, his own royal robe. Remember, he's the son of the king. And he gave him some weapons. He gave him armor, a sword, a bow, and a belt. Whatever King Saul gave David to do, he did it, and he did it well. Everybody approved of and admired David's leadership. So it started out with him volunteering to fight that giant Goliath, and once he was successful doing that, then King Saul gave him other things to do, and whatever he did, he was successful. Here's a question at the bottom of the page. If you gave a gift to someone special, what would you give them? Think about that. So after they returned home, after David had killed the Philistine, that was Goliath, the women poured out of all the villages of Israel, and they were singing and they were dancing, and when they sang about Saul killing thousands of enemies. But when they talked about David, or when they sang about David, they talked about David killing 10,000 enemies. And how do you think this made the king feel? The women were dancing and singing, and they sang about King Saul, little number, 1,000 enemies, and then they sang and they danced about David. David was 10,000 or more. This made Saul very, very angry. He took it as a personal insult, and from that moment on, he kept an eye on David. Now, Saul was afraid of David. It was clear that God was with him and had left King Saul. Everything David did turned out well. Yes, God was with him. As Saul more and more realized that God was with David, his fear of David increased, and it settled into another emotion. That emotion was hate. He began to hate David. In fact, he did hate David. And David went to Jonathan. Remember, Jonathan is his son, King Saul's son. And he said, "What have I done to your father that makes him so determined to kill me and that makes him hate me?" Oh, here's the picture for that page. He goes on, "It's true, as sure as God lives and as sure as you're alive before me right now, he's determined to kill me." And Jonathan said, "Well, tell me what you have in mind. I'll do anything for you." David said, "Tomorrow I'm scheduled to eat dinner with the king. Instead, I'll go hide in the field. If your father misses me, say..." David asked if he could run down to Bethlehem and worship with his family. If he says, "Good," then I'm safe. But if he gets angry, you'll know for sure that he's made up his mind to kill me. If I'm in the wrong, go ahead and kill me yourself." "Never," exclaimed Jonathan. "I'd never do that. If I get the slightest idea that my father wants to kill you, I'll tell you. Jonathan repeated his pledge of friendship for David. He loved David more than his own soul. On the holiday of the new moon, the king came to the table to eat. He sat where he always sat, but David's seat was empty. After day 2, David's seat was still empty. Saul asked Jonathan, his son, "So where's that son of Jesse? He hasn't eaten with us either yesterday or today." And Jonathan said, "David asked my special permission to go to Bethlehem." Saul exploded in anger at Jonathan. "Don't you think that I know that you're up to something with that son of Jesse? Now go get him and bring him here. From this moment, he's as good as dead." Oh my goodness. Jonathan stood up to his father. Why dead? What's he done? And Saul threw his spear at Jonathan to kill him. Well, that convinced Jonathan that his father had decided to kill David. In the morning, Jonathan went to the field, and he met with David there. And they kissed one another, and they wept, friend over friend, David weeping especially hard. Jonathan said, "Go in peace. The two of us will be friends in God's name forever." So Jonathan found out that his father really did want to kill David. That's how much he hated him. And he loved David as a friend so much that he was truthful with him. He went and told him that that really was what his father wanted to do. And so they said goodbye to each other. David knew that he was going to have to go somewhere else. So here's a picture of them. They're even weeping. They were such good friends that they had to part from each other. So here we are at the end of the chapter with pray. Thank God for your friends. Ask him to help you be a good friend in some special way to your friends. Make a new friend by asking God to show you ways to be a friend to someone who needs a friend. And there are lots of people in this world, and there are lots of people that could use a friend, and maybe you are that friend that they need. Ask God to lead you to that person. And then the other part, live. Make a list of your friends and list the good things about each one. What do you like in a friend? And then make a list of things about yourself that makes you a good friend. So, as David and Jonathan were very good friends and very close to each other, just think about what it is that makes your friends good friends to you and what would make you a good friend to others. And just ask God to help you to reach out to someone who needs a friend. And, be a friend and make friends. Make sure God is your friend. And I'm trying to find what the chapter is for next week so that I could tell you ahead of time what we're going to do for next week. Next week, we'll be talking about one of the prophets of God. His name was Elijah. So come back next week to learn about Elijah, one of the prophets of God. So the theme for today is be a good friend. And when you make new friends, do that. I'm sorry, Mike. I lost it. Can you just cut?